How was the release event for issue 3 in Los Angeles? How did that go?
Oh, it hit me with the easy fun one to start with. That's a relief. It was epic, man. It was in a low key in a low key way, which is how I like to roll. It was everything I hoped it would be. It had an interesting build up to it. I went on a road trip with two old Australian buddies of mine. We drove from Phoenix to LA in the preceding days with a pit stop in San Diego. And I thought it was going to be a nice, relaxing, kind of mellow drive, and it turned into I don't know, fear and loathing in fear and loathing in Arizona, and I ended up getting to the event in LA uh, pretty fried, but it was awesome to see everyone who I'd featured in the latest issue of Fisho Los Angelinos. They turned up. The weather was sweet. The fog there's a kind of sea fog down there around Cabrillo Beach. It unveiled just as we were rolling up, and the people who made it possible um, were there too, and it was, yeah. I mean, I've met everyone in the flesh because I shot them for the shot them for the zine itself. But during that process, I think I became really, close friends with a lot of those folks who were featured in those pages, and just to see their reactions, just to hand that, kind of half pound of printed matter over and see the flashes in people's eyes as they flicked through it was supreme. I mean, that's what it all really boils down to for me, is that crackle, man. It's that kind of like personal connection, and things coming back around full circle like that. That issue took much longer to put together than previous issues. I think that was a couple of reasons for that. One of them was just I just shot in this 48-hour kind of whirlwind, which I slept probably about three. That was the shoot weekend. I just shot so much content that the editing and curating process for it took a really long time. That kind of like joyful agonizing that you get when you're paring it down and you're paring it down, and something's gotta get a bullet, and you got to make those decisions. So it took a minute, but I think that made it uh, all the more loaded, and all the more gratifying to, yeah, finally kind of like pick up the boxes and put it back primarily in the hands of the all the fishers that were in the issue. But then there were also some kind of randos, I call them, like, other folks who pinged me and asked if they could come along, and yeah, we just had a grill. Daniel Darlin, shout out Chef Daniel, sous vide some amazing steaks, and we had a few buckets of potato salad, and smoked a few joints and had a laugh, and that was it. So yeah, it was an awesome time. It worked out super well, and I've got that weird lull feeling after you have that huge surge of energy from all the people, and then you kind of I'm back in Seattle now, so yeah, it's just a sweet lull after after the that kind of like there's fun electric couple of hours when you're with everybody.
Yeah, I don't know if you think the same as I do, but whenever I'm like grateful enough to have an experience like that, it's always super fun. And then almost instantly, like pretty shortly after, I'm really grateful for it, but then I think what's next? And then I kind of there's like a void for that sort of energy that feels like it's dissipated too quickly, and then I'm kind of on the hunt for it again. Is that close to how you operate, or how do you do it?
Yeah, absolutely, man. On the hunt. That's yeah, that kind of like really that really rings true. I mean, I think that once you print an issue and everything that you've hunted and gathered is kind of inked and boxed and shipped and in people's hands and yeah, you want to go you want to go hunting again. I kind of I identify as a primitivist in that sense. To me, the the joy of it is really the hunting. It's going out there and finding the raw materials and kind of like and capturing them. So I've got that transition, as you said, probably from lull and a rising tide of like, okay, I need to hunt. What's next? What's my next fix? How am I gonna get my next fix? So yeah.
It must be even more up and down, I guess, for you because like you're saying, it's like a whirlwind. You're compiling all this content, shooting photos, doing the writing, curating the writing, but then like there's you play the waiting game between putting it all together and waiting for it to show up like in hand. The printed version, like customers and readers, they just wait for each episode or each issue. You finish an issue and then wait for it and then deliver it to the waiting people. So it's got to be even more up and down, like low, busy.
That's right, man. It's yeah, it's just like that. I'm probably gonna inevitably use enormous amount of like fishing puns and maritime puns while we're talking. But yeah, it's like sets of waves, really. They come in and then they're there and then there's a gap and then sure enough they come again. But uh yeah, you gotta be I think I've learned over time to be okay with the kind of flat sea, for a minute, and and yeah, take that and try to enjoy that time, yeah, and just let things naturally take their course. But yeah, you absolutely hit me at the at that precise moment where because this issue 3, the Los Angelinos issue is particularly special. And um I wrote that in the opening essay to it because right from the start of Fisho, the folks in SoCal have just shown it a lot of love, and a lot of the original inspiration for Fisho came out of SoCal, and had plenty of time to kind of like reflect on the reasons why, and now the reasons why, are really obvious to me. And I think it's because I, in at least in the American chapter of my life, began my creative and a kind of artistic development here really as a street photographer in San Francisco. And street photography naturally it's in an urban setting. I mean, you're looking for shots of people, but for me at least, a lot of the spice, a lot of the stuff I was looking to hunt and gather was textures as well. And I could see that in your work. Sometimes you might just see like an amazing shopping cart or a broken wall or uh, graffiti, some trash that just has been kind of laid out in a with a kind of like accidental but divine art direction. And so the urban textures and urban environments are really kind of like foundational to me. And then when I started shooting fishing as well, those two worlds came together. I mean, I began Fisho issue 0, I called it. It was a called it a demo tape, which was a process that I went through with a guy called Elliot Aronow, who from Minor Genius. I think there's been a few, Zach Seeley and a few other Minor Genius folks have been on here. But when I was in the process of, kind of conceiving what my next creative project was going to be, I started reviewing a lot of my photography, and there was obviously a ton of street photography there. And there was fishing photography and nature photography. And I thought, why not I'm just going to slap these two things, these two worlds together, just mash these two worlds together and call it Street Gumbo. And I'm going to, put it out. I'm going to put it out into the world. But coming back to the point of why SoCal, I think that's because those elements are lived out by the different fishing communities down there. Fishing in LA is very influenced by hip hop, it's influenced by skating, it's influenced by graffiti, and that was all style and raw material that I really resonated with. So I guess it comes as no surprise that, what inspired me uh, from those fishers that I was finding down there married up so sweetly with, I guess, my own kind of style. And to to put that issue back out there and complete the Los Angelinos issue is huge, just because those folks down there make up the lion's share of people who are really enthusiastic about Fisher. So it's an outsized issue in that sense, because yeah, it kind of it completed the circle, so to speak.
I really love hearing that because I constantly kind of preach to my friends and I guess anyone that will listen. I tell them as the world moves forward and as everything kind of bleeds together in a good way, you get pairings that people hadn't really thought of before. Like I would say I don't know every single take on fishing and publications and photography, but it seems like what you're doing is kind of in a lane on its own. Like you're one of the people pioneering like putting these all together. But I think the idea of them being together makes sense, sort of, but it always takes the right person, like with the idea or the inside info, to be able to put two things together in a way that totally makes sense, like harmoniously. So I think like you individually having an interest in all these things and thinking I can put this together in one cohesive package and deliver it back to the people that kind of inspire that. To me, it seems like not easy in a pejorative way, but it's easy for you because you were the right person to kind of spearhead a project like that. Like if someone else tried to put these things together, it might not make full sense. But I think to commend to you, like you being the person to set out to do this is what made it flow so well. I think at least that my opinion from an outsider looking in.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. And it's so interesting. The read and the reaction that different people get. I think the street gumbo, which if you've got it there, it's the one wearing the dude with the eagle mask on the kayak on the front there. That when I initially started compositing those images together, I have to admit there was a moment where I was like, does this make any sense? This is like this is like street, this is portrait hardcore portraits of street life in San Francisco, kind of like paired up with these idyllic kind of like rivers and streams and was like, this doesn't make any sense, but it had a juxtaposition. There was something about it that did work. There was like a juxtaposition in there that I kind of felt my gut was like, yeah, this is right. I did show it. I did show it to show it to a few people. I mean, I showed it to my wife, as you always do. It's just like, I don't get it. This doesn't make any sense. These two things, and but then thanks to shout out again to Elliot Arana, who was helping me at that time to um I don't know, I suppose kind of like get my center my creative self more. And I could tell he was like, dude, don't not put this out. Like, you have to you definitely, this is it. Put it out. So I did. And yeah, the street gumbo, the issue zero is definitely the kind of the most radical. It was the one that I got the most, uh, you know, people were curious about it more than anything else. I don't think everyone got it, but a lot of people still wanted to know what it was. Like, what is this exactly? And that that loop, leaving that imaginative loop in there, that it does provoke questions, and it does provoke questions, and there's a blank in there for you to project in your own understanding, or kind of make some kind of bridge of meaning. That's huge. I think that a lot of great um, artistic and kind of imaginative work leaves that uh, leaves that loop for the viewer or the person experiencing it to close themselves. And people get a lot of there's a lot of pleasure in closing that yourself. I know I get it when I look at a a piece of art or a photo and there's some section of it that has some mystery. Um, I love that.
Yeah, no, me too. That maybe not exclusively the only thing I look for, but when I find it, it's my favorite as well. Like just someone else kind of getting you almost all the way, and then you just finishing the thought or the sentence yourself in the way that you want to. I love when that happens. It's rare, so it's also like to commend you being the catalyst for that, kind of providing that loop for other people to feel on themselves. That's a rarity and very cool to be able to do that.
Thank you, mate.
It's funny. I don't know if you're familiar at all, but there's a show on Apple TV called Platonic. It's Seth Rogen and Rose Byrne, I think. And last episode, they were kayaking on the LA River, and my girlfriend and I were watching it, and we were kind of thinking like, is this real or is this just for the show? And then I looked into it a bit, and you're probably familiar with these, but Jerry Sue had done some photos of the LA River like fishing scene. I forget like the exact context. I just knew he did some photo work around that. And then last night I was going through all the stuff you sent me, and I was telling my girlfriend this is exactly what we were wondering about, and this is like a whole section of this magazine dedicated to this culture. So it was cool that again, like a loop. We were curious. We didn't know like if it was real, how it worked, but then to be able to see the few pages you've dedicated in issue three exactly to that kind of gave us a bit more of an understanding what was going on.
Yeah, I mean that LA River shoot was heaven to me. I've got to confess that it was uh it was a helter-skelter kind of shoot. I had the entirety of the issue was, as I said, was kind of shot in like 48 hours, and I had three trips out on boats with the various crews down there, kicker fishing, time on the water, and then two guys, Jordan and Tom, and so I was on boats a lot, but I really wanted to get a sense of the geography of LA in the issue, and I reached out to a guy, Anton, a very good friend of mine, who is one of these people who's incredibly talented in a diversity of ways. He's an architect by trade, but he's also an extremely enthusiastic fly fisherman and fisherman in general, but probably the most knowledgeable fly fisherman I know. And the idyllic setting for fly fishing is, you know, the Gallatin River in Montana, or somewhere that you would imagine pristine, cascading water and rocks and yeah, I mean a kind of postcard of beauty. And when I called him up and was like, "Can you show me the can you show him? I've heard that this people can fly fish in the LA River. Can you, at like 5 hours notice, meet me down there, and can we fish the LA River?" And he was like, "Yeah, absolutely." And he called in another a great photographer, Eli Phillips, who also happens to be a ace fly fisherman. We met down there, and these guys put their waders on. Just as well they had waders on too. I don't know if you'd want to be wading into the LA River, without waders on. And they set to it. I mean, I perched up and shot kind of photos of the insane architecture that is the LA River waterway, and periodically duck down to shoot these guys as they fished. And then at a certain point, Anton, after many hours of trying, because the fish they were going for were carp, and carp is a very divisive fish. As an Australian, a carp is a invasive species that you wouldn't touch with a barge pole and would never even dream of fishing for. But in the States, people fish for them, but they're very finicky fish. They are extremely picky eaters, and it took at least 3 hours for uh, Anton to work out that they were. He caught one on a tiny little green uh, uh, ball. They're no bigger than just a maybe like a tenth of an inch long, and this 10-pound carp, inhaled it, and then he was on. He was he was trying to reel in this carp in 3 feet of LA River water, and it was doing laps around a shopping cart, and I'm like sloshing through the mud trying to not drop my gear. And it was exciting. It I'm so stoked that we pushed to make that shoot happen, because it would have been easy to have gone, oh, this is gonna ruin the logistics. But we did it, and it was a dirty, triumphant moment when he kind of finally held up that like golden, scaly green 10 pound trophy. So yeah, that's the LA River, as unbelievable as it seems and looks when you get there. They're efficient in it.
Did you get the read at all? Is that common for them to go out and spend so long just getting one bite? Like, is the waiting game part of it, like more so there than it would be other places?
That's a great question, and could probably take up the rest of the podcast explaining the reasons why people do wait for so many hours and days for a bite, to catch a fish. No, it's not uncommon. It's not uncommon at all. I think, and that's all across the fishing world. If you go to the complete other end of the spectrum and you're talking about the types of fish that Hemingway may have gone for, your marlin and your sailfish and other billfish, you can be out there trolling in the ocean for days at a time and not get a bite. You might not even see a fish, even with all the technology that you can cheat with these days to get yourselves proximate to a chance. Nature's just like that. Nature's fickle. It can just the fish can just not show up, and you can yeah, you can be waiting for days. But I think for hardcore fishermen, or anyone who really is genuinely into fishing, the waiting is a huge part of it. You know, that feeling of kind of anticipation that it might happen, the imagining of what it could be, and what might happen once it happens, and that's that meditative time is also, I think, what makes fishing magical. I mean, think about it like this. In this hectic world that we live in, where we're all being constantly bombarded by pings and messages and emails and stimulus of every type. It's almost zen-like to have all of your concentration channeled through one single line, one line of, monofilament becomes, or braid, or whatever material whatever line you're fishing with, becomes the entirety of your mind is concentrated on that, and it's liberating just to have that one thing as your concern. I mean, it's a little more complex than that. You're still on a boat, and you're still or on a dock, or wherever there's still things going on around you, are kind of the background, but you're laser beamed onto the prospect of what might happen at the other end, which is pretty special, I think.
Yeah, no, I'm thinking of it and I love the idea of it, but I personally have no patience really, and in almost everything I do, I'm quite impatient. So I would love to think that I could do it, and it would be a nice like kind of 180 from how I do most things, but I might admit that it would not necessarily be for me. But as I'm saying it, there are probably thousands, hundreds of thousands of people who thought fishing wouldn't be for them, and now it's their favorite thing. So maybe I could be one of those as well.
Yeah, I mean, you make a good point, and I should make a distinction here as well, because what I was just talking about was very focused on the actual fishing bit, rod in hand, line in water, waiting for the fish. But one of the original inspirations for Fisho, probably the biggest one for sure, was that part of it is only a tiny part of fishing. To me, fishing is an adventure. It's time spent in the outdoors, getting somewhere and getting back. I would say that of all the fishing trips I've ever been on, there is, a pretty vivid memory of the moment I would, catch and almost always release a fish. But it's all the stuff in between that makes it so fun. It's the when I used to fish in Sydney, which is a wonderful city to fish, because you can live right in the middle of the city and be in a absolutely gorgeous, kind of bay, and be fishing in 20 minutes drive from where I used to live in Darlinghurst. But every morning I would go at 5 a.m. I would stop off at the same gas station, and I'd buy bait there, and I'd buy a meat pie. I'd buy in Australia we love our meat pies, and you can eat them at 5 a.m. And yeah, I'd have the Tex-Mex kind of like chili cheese and steak pie, and I'd sit in my battered up old Toyota Echo, and I'd eat that pie and have a quiet moment. And that was that was as exciting and as memorable as the fishing itself, and all the other moments in between. So fishing is it's one way to get to have an outdoor adventure, to have a bit of communion with the elements, and that's also what I discovered during the initial kind of phases of like researching Fisho. Researching is not the right word, but kind of browsing around, seeing what outdoor culture in the States was like. I kind of realized like our fishing, fishing is just one pursuit. Through Fisho, I've become aware of so many great outdoor activities, great brands, great art projects and publishing projects that touch on the outdoors. Zach Seeley, who's a good friend of mine, publishes Hardpack, and that's a kind of skiing magazine. And I've got some friends here who there's a shop in Seattle called Windthrow, and it's really a uh, it's really a kind of mishmash curation of like trail running gear, and mountaineering stuff and camping stuff, and it all kind of hangs together. And I take inspiration from that, and yeah, I'm like Fisho in my mind at least is it sits amongst um pretty infinite interest I have in in the outdoors, and in the States as well, which is I've been here 12 years, but so much of the country that I haven't seen, and Fisho has been a kind of a vehicle for me to fantasize about a lot of places, uh, in the States that I'd like to go to, particularly the South. Anyone down there in Louisiana who wants to take me out fishing, let me know.
Can I? I'm just curious if I can ask. When you came to the States, what did you replace? Like, if you had the trend or tradition of getting a meat buy and bait and going out for the day, what did you replace that with in the States? Like, what do you eat now before fishing?
Well, to answer it chronologically, I think when I arrived in uh, uh, in San Francisco, which was the first city that was my first home city in the States, I think I replaced at least that kind of like hunter-gatherer instinct with this is going to sound so weird and incongruent, but like rather than put it this way, rather than walking along the rocks, the rock cliffs in Sydney and looking down into the water and seeing if I could spot kingfish shadows and throwing lures at them, I started walking down the streets in San Francisco and was began looking for interesting things to photograph. Um, it's one of the original great street photographers, Henri Cartier-Bresson. He had a style that he called fishing, and that was, he would wait on the street for he'd create an interesting frame that he liked, a nice composition, and he'd wait for someone to walk or ride a bicycle or whatever through that frame, and he'd snap a photo, and he called it fishing. Um, but for me, I never had too much patience for that. I wanted to move around, so I was literally walking down the streets of San Francisco, casting my eye around for things to photograph. And just for context, at that point, I was in the early stages of shooting material for what would become Mission Gold, which was a publishing series that I did about street life in San Francisco. So, in a way, the photography became satisfied my kind of hunter-gatherer instincts that would previously have been hunting around for fish in Sydney. Um, I still fished in the Bay Area from time to time, but I think my muse and my life became the streets of the Mission neighborhood in particular in San Francisco and um, what I would eat. You asked what I would eat there, and I'd eat the street. Yeah, I would eat. I'd take up. I'd yeah. I mean, I'd take in energy. I'd take in energy and shoot all these delicious, delicious piles of trash that people would leave lying around, and I would, um, yeah, I don't know, man. I was satisfied. My appetite for everything was satisfied in San Francisco for very many years.
That's incredible. You are, I think, better at transitioning in this conversation than I am because I was trying to think of a way. Like, how was I gonna kind of blatantly ask you? Because I know before Fisho there was Mission Gold, and I was gonna ask you if you could please explain to me and the listeners what that was. And I know you told me a bit about the transition between Mission Gold to Fisho kind of being a seamless and like it had a narrative through it the whole shift. So if I can ask, can you backtrack to Mission Gold, tell us a bit more about that and how that sort of ended up becoming Fisho all these years later?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I arrived in San Francisco and I mean I fell in love with the city immediately. People love to hate, San Francisco has haters. I've noticed that people from New York tend to universally not like San Francisco that much, but coming from Sydney, the bridge, the water, the climate, it felt like a sister city to Sydney when I kind of arrived there. Um, and what struck me that was so distinct was just the crackling kind of street life in the Mission neighborhood where I lived. At least in my eye, everything was just kind of hyper cinematic. I don't know how to describe it. It was my eyes were just kind of like jumping out everywhere, all the smells, all the sounds. And one of the things that struck me immediately, I think, was this disparity in the city. Um, that was obviously had people who are enormously wealthy, but then also had a kind of a shocking, honestly, income disparity. You see people who were, I don't know, well-to-do startup entrepreneurs walking down the street, and literally underfoot would be a homeless person, kind of curled up in a blanket. And at least coming from Sydney, coming from Australia, that homelessness exists like that, but it wasn't anywhere near as striking as it was in San Francisco, and I think that began a kind of like real feeling of empathy and kind of confusion. I couldn't understand how so much wealth might be so poorly distributed that these there were so many homeless people. I just couldn't get it. And I suppose I was thinking about that and for a long time, and it began sense of curiosity about who the people, living on the street were, where they'd come from, how they got there. And a particular fascination to me was the kind of commerce of the street, the shadow economy, as I kind of coined the term, which is people who were doing sidewalk sales on the street, folks who would be diving dumpsters or salvaging discarded building materials or uh, recycling, and folks would lay the goods out on the street and they would sell them off the blankets there. I mean, mostly to other folks who were also, in that kind of income bracket, uh, who were looking for, cheap batteries or comic books or headphones or whatever it was. And that marketplace, so to speak, was so interesting to me. I think everywhere that I've lived in the world, um, I've always been fascinated by markets. And here was this almost like Byzantine market to me. Filled with it was filled with spicy, interesting stuff that I wondered about. And I began talking to the folks who were selling the stuff on the street and asking where they were getting it and how and and kind of researching it a bit and talking to the pro recyclers, the folks who were coming by with the shopping carts filled with bottles and cans and cardboard, and I just wanted to know more. I wanted to do it. I wanted to have a go myself. I wanted to go along and see where these treasures that were coming out of the trash were coming from and how people were doing it. So I started taking photos and interviewing people, and then um, started going out and accompanying pro recyclers and doing some dumpster diving myself. And I thought, I'm going to publish. I want to publish this. I want to publish a zine that shows this life. I was very inspired by Colors magazine, in the 1990s. Um, it was bankrolled by Benetton, but it pulled no punches in the imagery and the subject matter, and I knew what I was dealing with was pretty raw and pretty real, but I just wanted to do it. So I thought, how am I gonna do this? And it didn't feel right at all to sell it, or to make any type of money from it at all. So I partnered with the Coalition on Homelessness in San Francisco and decided that I would, from my own pocket, uh, because at that time, I was working, I was earning good money. I'd come to that city to, in a way, benefit from the gold rush that was happening, in the kind of like around 2000, well, throughout all the 2000s. So, I was working and making a good living, and I decided I'm going to print this magazine. I'm going to, pay for the printing of it, and I'm going to donate the copies to street vendors who were working for the Coalition on Homelessness. And basically, the Coalition on Homelessness would give these folks, a little newspaper that was a couple of bucks, and they would sell it, and they'd keep all the proceeds from it. And I just approached them and said, "Look, I'm going to print this magazine. Maybe your street vendors can want to sell this and keep all the proceeds from that as well." And that's what I did. That's what happened with all three issues of Mission Gold. The first one was focused on the street economy of the city. That was money. The second one was focused on, oh, I suppose, art and yeah, on outside of art, it contained a lot of poetry and kind of some wild stories and illustrations and other things that showcase the incredible imaginations of people that I met on the street. And the third issue was Misfits, and that one was that one took much longer to put together. I actually finished it during COVID after I'd left San Francisco and moved to Seattle. And that was a look at places really. I mean, over the course of doing Mission Gold for for 5 years and spending, you know, I don't know, a few thousand hours probably marching around and and just I don't know, just enjoying my strolls through the streets of San Francisco. A lot of locations came up that were symbolic and important, at least in the world that I was reflecting in the magazine. And so gas stations, SRO, um, SRO hotels, certain parks, and certain street corners and intersections. Um, they were featured in that third issue, and I had a go at writing short fiction as well, which is really bloody hard. If anyone's ever tried to write a short story, uh, I admire. I take my hat off because I wrote some short stories for that issue that were took me an eternity to do. It's a really hard form of it's a really hard writing skill. So that's Mission Gold. And yeah, it was the love of my life for years. And when I moved to Seattle for COVID, I um, had an 18-month-year-old daughter, and I'd gotten married and taken on all of the responsibilities of being a grown up. But the transition to Seattle was the transition to Seattle was one that took some adjustment because I left behind my muse, and I think that Fisho gradually emerged as the new muse in my new city.
I don't want to get you sidetracked. It's such a concise explanation. It's amazing. Yeah, like you're pinning such a picture for me, and I assume anyone listening. But I want to ask, was it hard for you to gain like the kind of the trust and the access to be able to like make images of this, kind of like probably under talked about, like underexposed street scene, like where people standoffish about someone kind of infiltrating them, or was that you were around so much that they just trusted you because you were maybe not one of them, but as close to one of them as you could get, like being a part of it, going on missions, like educating yourself? Did that help you gain access, or how did that go?
That's a great question, man, and one I'm very happy to answer, and one that I'm one I'm glad to answer because how do you gain access? I think that honesty is always the best policy. And I think I'm an honest person to a fault, actually. And I genuinely wanted to know the stories of the people who I was approaching. And I'd kind of hold that energy. I'd hold that energy with me and walk up and I'd smile. I think a smile is a real one because I really felt it. And I'd just say, my name's Nick. I publish a magazine called, Mission Gold. It's about street life in the city, and I'd like to ask you I want to know if you wouldn't mind answering some questions or maybe even letting me take a photo of whatever what it is you're doing. I mean, nine times out of ten, um, uh, I'd be I would I'd spot someone doing something that to me looked interesting, and I'd just kind of wonder. I just I just wander over. Um, there's a guy called Din who was a guy from New Orleans who I met there, and under an overpass in the Soma district, and I was just doing my stroll, just doing my kind of afternoon stroll, and he was there, and he had a like a drawing book laid out in front of him, and I could see that he was creating these using these velvet tipped, color pens. He was drawing kind of like a Goya type scene of some kind of monster devouring something else. It was kind of dark and colorful at the same time and occult looking. And I was like, oh man, I have to know what this is. So I stopped off and just said, "Hey man, can you tell me about what you're doing?" And it immediately kind of, gives me that immediate look of like that people will give, which is, "Who the fuck are you and what do you want?" I mean, you would get that happened a lot, but uh, yeah, um I'd be honest. I'd be honest that I wanted to know about what, or I wanted, Din to invite me into his world to explain to me what he was so passionately drawing under that overpass. And that's one example times hundreds, where that happened.
That's like were there any people who kind of came around to you? Like, did you gonna face an obstacle, like have people not want to share stuff with you day one, but then a couple weeks or months or years later, like did they come around and you end up being friends with them and being let into their universe?
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you're talking about, and the answer is, um, yeah, the answer is yes. There were people. There's a photo in issue I think it's in the third issue. Uh, beautiful woman wearing a cap on her head, and that to me to me is like that's like one of that's the spirit animal of San Francisco of Mission God was that cat perched on this lady's head. I mean, it was on a leash, but and I'd seen her for years walking around with this cat on her head, and she would, and I'd always ask, it'd say, "You have a beautiful feline perched top of your head. Would you mind if I took a portrait of you?" And she'd always say no and kind of like and walk off. And I think probably on the 25th attempt, she just finally relented and let me take a photo. So yeah, sometimes it did take polite persistence. but I don't know, man. I spent so many hours doing it. I have a huge archive of audio interviews and things, and yeah, I'm sure there are examples where it took much longer to gain people's confidence. And yeah, there was certainly an aspect of kind of earning your stripes, so to speak, especially with the pro recyclers. I mean, they're not going to take just anyone out who they, hasn't really demonstrated that they want to be there for the right reasons and that they are, um, genuinely invested in the game. People take it seriously, and not surprisingly, a lot of pro recyclers and pro street resellers see it as a profession, as a career. There's skills involved. There's best practices. There are tips and tricks, and to divulge that stuff to someone else, you have to trust them. So yeah, I was lucky that I had several, pro recyclers and street salespeople who trusted me with that stuff. And yeah, I mean, to evidence that you have to kind of be on the inside to be able to really tell the story of that world. Yeah, I mean, a journalist from the New York Times approached me around 2019 and wanted to do a story that was, about the economy, yeah, about the street economies of San Francisco, and but needed help being introduced to people who were doing it. And for several months, I suppose kind of acted as a fixer for this New York Times investigative team who wanted to do a story. And yeah, I'd introduce them to the people that they wanted to profile. And yeah, that was to answer your question. Yeah, particularly the deeper you get into that world, um the more people have to trust you.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm glad we got sidetracked, but I didn't fully want to detract from your story. If we can hop back in where I kind of interrupted, you were saying you had moved to Seattle, kind of in COVID. You were putting out the third issue of Mission Gold, but then where that transitioned to issue zero of Fisho, right?
Yeah, it did. And I've also realized that I'm speaking in entire chapters here, so feel free to jump in and
Oh, and it's absolutely perfect. If I can get a guest to talk for the whole time without me saying anything, that's ideal. So this is very perfect. It's incredible. Please go on exactly how you've been going on.
oh man. Okay. Yeah. I mean, finished Mission Gold, I suppose, remotely when I was up here. And yeah, was just I was missing my muse and adjusting to a new city. And I'd also had been working hard for kind of several several years, um, for a big company. And between the job and my personal life with my kids, and just this as a foreign and alien and new city to me, I kind of lost a bit of spark. I think I was looking to kind of reconnect with something, you know, primitive and artistic, and just that set me on fire. And that's when I reached out to Elliot Aronow from Minor Genius, who I'd heard through I'd heard through friends of mine, was a person particularly kind of talented at finding that pilot light, and kind of, turning the blue flame up for people. And we started we started working together. And right at the start, it wasn't Fisho. I think it was probably a bit like how I sounded this entire time. It was me rambling, me rambling and trying to organize and, find my creative point. But Elliot was instrumental in helping me to to kind of get to this realization that um, that Fisho could be a thing. Fisho could be the natural evolution of kind of street of from the streets of uh, San Francisco, and a Frankenstein baby with the beautiful beautiful green landscapes of Washington. And yeah, it was a catalyst that I don't remember exactly how it happened, but at a certain point it did. And there's no doubt that I was took it I had been introduced to Zach Seeley, who publishes Hardpack magazine, which is how to describe it. I mean, it's a ski magazine like no other. And uh, I think less than the subject matter of what Zach had published, just to see that he'd done it, and that he had he'd obviously had a vision that he'd been harboring for probably a really long time, and then just committed and was like, I'm going to make this happen. And I think that you know that inspiration definitely helped me to go, yep, fishing. This is what I'm going to do. So.
That I should have asked this so much earlier, but I'm wondering, like, when actually, like, at what age? I know it was in Sydney, but when did you officially like start fishing? Like, because it sounds like that would have been way before you ever had a concept for even Mission Gold. Before you ever thought about putting the fishing together in a magazine. Was that they did the fishing predate photography for you? Like, did fishing come before any other element of any of your story?
Oh man, I hope you can do some magic editing here, Wes, and chop up some of my monologues and fit in some of this important stuff in it. I promise I'm going to keep my answers really short and sweet for this particular section. Yes, fishing definitely predated photography. My earliest and most glorious memories of my childhood are almost so much of it is around fishing. I think I caught my first fish. I remember it with a photographic memory of catching a butterbream, it's called, just this kind of little silver fish on the Brisbane River in Queensland. In That's a state that I grew up in. It's kind of like it's almost like it's almost Florida in terms of its climate, quite subtropical. And I remember catching this fish, and that childhood feeling was so strong. It was adventure coupled with mystery, coupled with I don't know, satisfaction, I suppose. And I fished my whole youth. I also spearfished a lot, and I would, which is a very different experience. Obviously, you're underwater, but I would go on a camping, camping trips to the various kind of local creeks, not quite in the Australian outback, but in the country there, and yeah, sublime memories of floating underwater in the current of the river and having the reeds underwater kind of undulating and the sun shot, the water like sunshot, shadows and light here and there, and and trying to catch mullet that were swimming past in schools, and the whole underwater world just completely silent. And then the chink, that little metal chink sound of when the spear hits the fish. That was the only sound I'd hear for hours. And so, yeah, fishing, spear fishing, camping, all part of my youth, and definitely predated just about every um, you know one of my kind of artistic or creative instincts for sure.
When you were that age, like when you were growing up and you were that deep in it, was that like were all your school friends and everything, were they also doing that, or were you kind of an outlier being interested in all this stuff?
Oh no, there were different groups, and I've always been someone who moved, you know, happily and fairly easily through different groups of people. There was the group who wore us the Chicago Bulls jerseys and skateboarded down to the local shopping town, and we would pound away on the NBA 1992 video game and shoplift cigarettes and do all the things that teenagers do. And there were other groups of folks who went off to the river and camped and did that stuff too. So I probably partook in both of those groups.
It's funny because maybe that sort of would explain why you grew up just to have such an eclectic mix of interest, like all kind of melded together. Ever since a kid, you were kind of pulling from all different like scenes and all different groups of people to make you like make more sense as a person. That could be why the magazine you make seems like it wouldn't make sense, but it makes perfect sense when it's you doing it.
Yeah, I think that I've moved around a lot in my life. 10 years in Asia, then 10 years in Australia, 10 years in Europe, and now 15 years in the States. And between in all of those moves, in all of those different places, lots of different cities, and yeah, I've always been kind of like a transient. That doesn't sound right. Someone who has moved around a lot, and yeah, maybe that's reflected in my work. I don't know. It's interesting when other people can kind of reflect back to me what it all means.
I don't wanna really put you on the spot and make you pick one. But if you had to, what out of all the places you've lived and spent extensive amounts of time, what's your favorite fishing scene?
Oh, that's a really tough one. That's a really tough one. You know what? Oh man, I have to pick. I'd have to go home. Maybe I'm a bit homesick, but I'd say that sitting on a reef off Fraser Island in Queensland, doing some reef fishing. It's the laziest type of fishing. It's so fun. You basically sit in a tin boat above a reef, and you drop a something fishy down down into the reef itself. And the way that those reefs work is this whole ecosystems of fish down there, and the variety of fish that you can catch on a reef in Australia is just astonishing. It's the lottery. You're probably never gonna catch the same thing twice. And just for that, just for the thrill of the aquatic lottery that's fishing reefs in Australia, I'd have to go for that one near my hometown. Yeah.
That makes sense, dude. Like, I mean, it's hard to, no matter what, I feel it's hard to top your first memories of something you've like kind of maintained a lifelong passion for. So even if maybe it's bigger and better, other places like where you're describing with hearing the noise of spearfishing and stuff, that's at least me, like my first memories are gonna resonate more than anything after that.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, still remember the phone numbers of my girlfriend and friends when I was 11 years old, and still, still remember those memories too. For sure, they kind of just get that visceral imprint into your heart. Really.
That's funny. I would like to think I have a good memory. I'm pretty nostalgic. I definitely don't remember any phone numbers from back then, so it's commendable that you do. I'm looking at my stopwatch. I think I've eaten up enough of your afternoon, and I don't want to keep the episode super long and have people tuning out. I know there's a million things we didn't get to talk about. You were nice enough to send me a bunch of reading material with steak notes, and I barely got to bring any of that up. So I apologize, but I hope you're happy with the things we did get to touch on. I think that was and I made like really you painted such a picture. Like I think anyone listening is gonna really have a bit more understanding about what you're doing, but also I think that builds an immense amount of curiosity. Like I'm for sure I'll be like texting you after. I just want to know more about what you're up to, even personally. But beyond that, unless there's anything that you really feel we didn't get to talk about, maybe we should wind down.
Yeah, absolutely, man. No, that sounds perfect. Super grateful for the opportunity. Yeah, super grateful for the opportunity to talk and yeah, man. Thank you so much for your time, Wes. Big fan of Nowhere Fast and yeah, really, I don't know, stoked and proud to join a pretty incredible list of folks who've had a chance to to be on here. Super humbled by it. So thank you very much.
Oh, the pleasure is all mine. Before we actually hop off, the mic is yours. If you want to take a second, let anyone listening know where they can find you or Fisho or any of your other projects, whatever you want to promote right now, please do.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Fisho Instagram is just at Fisho Magazine is a great place just to get a snapshot of what's going on. I'm better at keeping that active and up to date. And yeah, what's going on? Well, we talked about a little bit of the lull after Fisho issue 3, and I think in that lull, I've got some exciting ideas for what could happen next. But I'm always open to I'm always open to new collaborations. I'm always open to connecting with new people. And if anyone sees or reads or feels that they want to hop on an adventure with me, whether it's on a boat or in print or in film or whatever, I'm around and always happy to chat with folks who love their creative craft for sure.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Hopefully, you finally get on that boat in Louisiana.
Yeah, we'll see, mate. Lots of yeah, that would be pretty epic. Who knows? Maybe someone out there is listening. Let's see.
Yeah, beyond that, thank you so much for answering. I'll do my best to kind of mash them up in a way that maybe makes a bit more sense than how they were asked, but it's also it's kind of on brand to be really, really sporadic and random for me. I don't know. So lucky, but people let me get away with the randomness. I think that's kind of what people expect from these interviews. So
I think you've definitely let me get away with some get away with a bit today as well, mate. So I'm yeah, I'm grateful right back.
enjoy the rest of the weekend and keep in touch, please. I would love to follow along and see what happens next and next. And I have a good feeling it'll be nothing but impressive stuff in the future from Fisho.
All right, mate. Thanks so much.
Yeah, enjoy.
All right. Bye, mate. Bye bye.
Peace.